Winning starts with clarity, not speed. Most people misunderstand this, and because of that misunderstanding, they spend years running without reaching anywhere meaningful. We are living in a time where everyone is in a hurry. Hurry to succeed, hurry to earn, hurry to prove, hurry to settle. But let me ask you something very gently. Have you ever seen a person reach the right destination by running in the wrong direction? Speed does not guarantee success. Direction does. Many people believe that if they move faster, life will automatically improve. They keep themselves busy, constantly occupied, always doing something. But being busy is not the same as being purposeful. A confused mind with high speed only creates faster confusion. Imagine getting into a car, pressing the accelerator fully, but not knowing where you want to go. The car will move, fuel will burn, energy will be wasted, and eventually you will stop, not because you reached your destination, but because you are exhausted. That is exactly how many lives are being lived today. Clarity is knowing what truly matters to you, not what society expects, not what relatives suggest, not what social media celebrates, but what genuinely aligns with your values, your strengths, and your inner calling. Without clarity, people chase borrowed dreams. They run after goals they never chose consciously. Later in life, they feel empty, not because they failed, but because they succeeded at something that never belonged to them. Speed often comes from pressure. Pressure to compete, pressure to compare, pressure to not fall behind. But clarity comes from silence and reflection. It comes when you pause long enough to ask yourself important questions. What kind of life do I want to live? What gives me peace? What kind of person do I want to become? These questions are uncomfortable, which is why many people avoid them. It feels easier to stay busy than to sit with yourself and think deeply. But avoiding clarity is costly. It costs you years. When clarity is missing, even success feels heavy. You achieve something, but instead of joy, there is anxiety. Instead of satisfaction, there is fear of losing it. Why? Because deep inside, you are not sure if this is what you really wanted. On the other hand, when clarity is present, even slow progress feels meaningful. You may not have reached yet, but you feel peaceful because you know you are walking in the right direction. Life is not a sprint, it is a journey of alignment, and alignment takes time. Think of a seed planted in the soil. It does not grow by force. It grows by being in the right environment, with the right nourishment, at the right pace. If you keep digging it out every day to check whether it has grown, you will destroy it. Similarly, when people rush their growth without clarity, they sabotage their own potential. Clarity also gives you the courage to say no. No to distractions, no to unnecessary competition, no to paths that look attractive but feel wrong inside. Without clarity, you say yes to everything and eventually you feel scattered. With clarity, you may move slower, but every step is intentional. And intentional steps compound over time. There is a beautiful difference between urgency and importance. Urgency screams, importance whispers. Speed listens to urgency, clarity listens to importance. Most people respond to what is loud, not to what is meaningful. They chase deadlines, trends, and opinions, but ignore their inner voice. That inner voice is quiet, but it is wise, and it only becomes audible when you slow down. Clarity does not mean you will never feel confused again. It simply means you have a compass. Even when you feel lost, you know how to realign. Without clarity, every obstacle feels like a reason to quit. With clarity, obstacles become part of the path. You don't panic when things move slowly because you understand that growth is not always visible. Sometimes, slowing down feels scary because we think we are falling behind. But behind whom? Everyone has a different timeline. A flower does not look at another flower and feel insecure for blooming earlier or later. It blooms when it is ready. The problem with speed is that it forces comparison. Clarity frees you from it. When you are clear, you stop measuring your life with someone else's scale. You stop asking, am I ahead or behind? And start asking, am I aligned or distracted? That shift alone changes everything. Peace enters your life not when everything is perfect, but when your actions match your values. So before you rush into the next goal, the next job, the next relationship, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself, is this movement coming from clarity or fear? From purpose or pressure? Because a slow step in the right direction is far more powerful than a fast run in the wrong one. Remember this deeply. Life rewards clarity with fulfillment and speed without clarity with burnout. Choose direction first. Speed will naturally follow. Discipline is choosing what you want most over what you want now. This sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest truths to live by. Most struggles in life are not because people lack talent or opportunity. They happen because people struggle with consistency. In the moment, the mind always looks for comfort. It wants ease, pleasure, rest, and distraction. Discipline is the quiet strength that teaches the mind to pause and ask, is this serving my future or only satisfying my present? Human nature is wired for instant gratification. We want quick results, fast rewards, immediate validation. If something takes time, effort, or discomfort, we often postpone it. I'll start tomorrow. I'll do it later. Just this once. But life is not shaped by the big decisions we make once in a while. It is shaped by the small decisions we make every day, especially when no one is watching. Discipline lives in those moments. Think about this carefully. Your future self is completely dependent on the choices your present self is making right now. Every time you choose comfort over commitment, you are borrowing happiness from the future and paying it back with interest. Discipline is not about punishment. It is about self-respect. It is saying, I care about the person I am becoming, even when it's inconvenient. Many people believe discipline means a strict, joyless life. That is a misunderstanding. True discipline actually creates freedom. When you discipline your time, you gain more time. When you discipline your body, you gain energy. When you discipline your mind, you gain peace. The absence of discipline may feel good today, but it creates chaos tomorrow. Discipline may feel uncomfortable today, but it creates stability for life. There will always be a battle inside you between what feels good now and what will feel good later. The phone buzzing, the bed calling, the temptation to quit, the voice that says, you deserve a break. Discipline does not silence that voice. It simply refuses to obey it blindly. It teaches you to delay pleasure so that you don't delay progress. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is intentional. Motivation depends on mood. Discipline depends on values. That is why motivation alone cannot change your life. You won't always feel inspired, confident, or energetic. Some days you will feel tired, bored, or discouraged. Discipline is what carries you through those days. It shows up even when motivation disappears. Discipline also means doing the right thing even when the results are not immediate. We live in a world that celebrates outcomes, not effort. But effort is where character is built. Results are often delayed. And if you only work when you see progress, you will quit too early. Discipline trusts the process. It understands that growth is happening beneath the surface, even when nothing seems to be changing. There is a powerful difference between interest and commitment. Interest says, I will do this when it is convenient. Commitment says, I will do this even when it is difficult. Discipline is the bridge between goals and achievement. Without it, dreams remain ideas. With it, ideas turn into reality. Discipline also protects you from regret. Regret doesn't come from failure alone. It comes from knowing you didn't give your best. When you look back at your life, you won't regret the days you tried and struggled. You will regret the days you chose comfort over growth again. Discipline minimizes that regret by helping you act in alignment with your potential. It's important to understand that discipline is not built overnight. It is developed gradually, like a muscle. You don't start by making massive changes. You start small. You keep promises to yourself, even tiny ones. Waking up when you said you would. Finishing what you started. Showing up consistently. Each small act of discipline strengthens your self-trust. Without discipline, life becomes reactive. You respond to moods, circumstances, and people. With discipline, life becomes proactive. You decide who you want to be and then act accordingly. Discipline gives you control over your direction, even when you cannot control your circumstances. In the end, discipline is an act of love toward yourself. It is not about being harsh, it is about being honest. Honest about where you are, honest about where you want to go, and honest about what it will take to get there. Choosing what you want most over what you want now is not easy, but it is always worth it. Because every disciplined choice you make today is a gift you give to your future self. Your habits decide your future silently. This is one of the most underestimated truths in life, because habits don't announce themselves. They don't make noise. They don't demand attention. And they don't look dramatic. Yet, over time, they shape your character, your health, your relationships, and your destiny. Most people wait for big moments to change their lives, but life is rarely changed in big moments. It is changed in the ordinary, repetitive actions you perform every single day. Habits are powerful because they work in the background. You don't notice them while they are forming, just like you don't notice a clock ticking when you're deeply engaged in something. But one day, you look back and realize how far you've come, or how far you've drifted away. That distance was not created overnight. It was created silently, through small choices repeated consistently. The mind loves familiarity. What you do repeatedly becomes comfortable, and what becomes comfortable eventually feels normal. That is why good habits feel difficult in the beginning and bad habits feel easy. But with time, the roles reverse. Good habits start to feel natural, and bad habits begin to feel heavy. Unfortunately, many people quit too early to experience this shift. They give up while the habit is still uncomfortable, not realizing that comfort is just a few consistent repetitions away. Your habits are a reflection of your identity. You don't just wake up one day and become confident, disciplined, or healthy. You become those things by repeatedly acting like a confident, disciplined, or healthy person. Every habit is a vote for the type of person you are becoming. One healthy meal won't transform your body, and one workout won't change your fitness. But repeated healthy choices slowly rewrite your self-image. What makes habits so dangerous is that they feel insignificant in the moment. Skipping one workout doesn't seem like a big deal. Procrastinating today feels harmless. Choosing distraction over focus just once feels justified. But habits compound, just like interest. A small negative habit repeated daily creates a big negative result over time. In the same way, a small positive habit, practiced consistently, creates extraordinary outcomes. The difference between successful and unsuccessful lives often comes down to a few daily routines. Many people blame circumstances for where they are in life. They blame luck, timing, or other people. But if you look closely, circumstances are often influenced by habits. The habit of planning creates clarity. The habit of learning creates opportunity. The habit of reacting emotionally creates conflict. Over time, habits shape the environment you live in, and then the environment reinforces the habits. It becomes a cycle. Habits also shape your mindset. The way you start your morning, the content you consume, the people you spend time with. These are not random choices. They are habits, and they quietly influence how you think, how you feel, and how you respond to challenges. A habit of complaining trains the mind to focus on problems. A habit of gratitude trains the mind to see possibilities. The future you experience depends on which mental habits you nurture. One of the biggest mistakes people make is waiting for motivation to build habits. Habits are not built by motivation, they are built by structure and repetition. Motivation fluctuates, habits stay. When something becomes a habit, it no longer requires intense willpower. That is why habits are so powerful. They reduce decision fatigue. You don't have to decide every day whether to do it. You just do it. Breaking bad habits and building good ones requires awareness before effort. You cannot change what you do not notice. Most habits run on autopilot. They are triggered by emotions, environments, or routines. Once you become aware of these triggers, you regain control. You realize that change does not require dramatic transformation. It requires small adjustments made consistently. Habits also teach patience. They remind you that real change is slow and steady. In a world obsessed with quick results, habits ask you to trust the process. You may not see results today or tomorrow, but if the habit is right, results are inevitable. This patience builds emotional resilience. You stop getting discouraged by temporary setbacks because you understand that consistency matters more than perfection. Your future is not something you suddenly arrive at. You walk into it step by step, habit by habit. The life you will live 5 years from now is already being shaped by the habits you practice today. Not by your intentions, not by your goals, but by your routines. Goals give direction, but habits provide movement. If you want to change your life, don't try to change everything at once. Change one habit. Choose one small action that aligns with the person you want to become and commit to it daily. Over time, that one habit will influence others. Confidence grows from keeping promises to yourself. And when self-trust grows, change becomes easier. In the end, habits are quiet architects of destiny. They don't shout, they don't rush, and they don't demand recognition, but they always deliver results. Good or bad, your habits are shaping your future right now. The question is not whether habits matter. The question is whether you are choosing them consciously or letting them choose your life for you. You cannot control people, but you can control your response. This realization is one of the most liberating lessons in life, yet it often takes years of emotional exhaustion to truly understand it. From a very young age, we try to manage people, how they should behave, how they should speak, how they should treat us. When they don't meet our expectations, we feel hurt, angry, or disappointed. But the truth is simple and uncomfortable. Expecting people to behave according to our wishes is a guaranteed path to frustration. Every person you meet is shaped by their own experiences, fears, conditioning, and emotional wounds. They see the world through their own lens, not yours. When someone reacts negatively, behaves unfairly, or misunderstands you, it is often a reflection of what is happening inside them, not a judgment of your worth. Yet, we take it personally. We give them power over our peace by reacting without awareness. Response is where your power lies. Reaction is automatic. Response is conscious. Reaction comes from emotion. Response comes from understanding. When you react, you allow external behavior to dictate your internal state. When you respond, you choose your behavior based on your values, not your triggers. This difference may seem small, but it changes everything. Most conflicts in life are not caused by what happened, but by how we responded to what happened. A harsh word, a delay, a disagreement, these are neutral events. It is our interpretation that turns them into emotional storms. When we respond with anger, we escalate the situation. When we respond with calm, we often disarm it. Calm does not mean weakness, it means control. Learning to respond rather than react requires awareness. Awareness of your emotions, your patterns, and your triggers. There are certain situations and people that push your emotional buttons. The moment you become aware of this, you gain a choice. You can pause, you can breathe, you can ask yourself, what response will serve me best right now? That pause is powerful. It creates space between stimulus and action. Many people believe that controlling emotions means suppressing them. That is not true. Suppression leads to resentment. Control means acknowledging the emotion without letting it drive your behavior. You can feel angry without acting angrily. You can feel hurt without becoming bitter. Emotional maturity is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to handle emotion wisely. When you stop trying to control people, relationships improve. Why? Because people sense acceptance. They feel less judged and less pressured. At the same time, you stop carrying the burden of constantly managing others. You conserve energy. You focus on what is within your control, your words, your tone, your actions, your boundaries. Response also protects your dignity. When you react impulsively, you often say or do things you later regret. Words spoken in anger cannot be taken back. Actions driven by emotion often damage trust. A thoughtful response, even in difficult situations, preserves self-respect. You may not control how others remember you, but you can control how you remember yourself. There is also a deep connection between response and inner peace. Inner peace does not come from a problem-free life. It comes from emotional stability. When you know that no matter what happens, you can handle yourself with grace, fear reduces. You stop walking on emotional eggshells. You stop being dependent on others' moods for your happiness. Responding consciously does not mean tolerating disrespect. It means setting boundaries calmly. Silence can be a response. Distance can be a response. Saying no politely can be a response. You do not need drama to assert yourself. Strength expressed quietly is often the strongest form of strength. When you master your response, you break unhealthy cycles. Someone shouts, you don't shout back. Someone criticizes, you don't attack in return. This does not mean the other person will immediately change, but it does mean the cycle ends with you. That is real power, ending patterns instead of repeating them. Over time, conscious responses build character. People begin to trust you. They feel safe around you. Not because you never feel emotions, but because you don't let emotions harm others or yourself. Leadership, in any form, is rooted in this ability. Those who can manage themselves can influence others. Ultimately, life will always present difficult people and challenging situations. That will never change. What can change is how much control you give them over your mind and mood. You don't need to win every argument or correct every misunderstanding. You need to protect your peace. When you understand that you cannot control people, but you can control your response, you reclaim your power. You stop being a victim of circumstances and start becoming a master of your inner world. And when the inner world is stable, the outer world loses its power to disturb you. Failure is not a punishment, it is feedback. Yet most people grow up fearing failure as if it is a sign of weakness, shame, or incompetence. From a young age, we are conditioned to believe that success is rewarded and failure is judged. Over time, this belief creates a deep fear of making mistakes. People begin to play safe, not because they lack dreams, but because they are afraid of falling. But life does not work that way. Growth demands failure. Progress requires mistakes. Without them, learning remains shallow. Failure is simply life communicating with you. It is information, not a verdict. When something does not work, life is not saying, "You are not good enough." It is saying, "This approach needs adjustment." But when ego gets involved, we take feedback personally. We attach our self-worth to outcomes, and when outcomes disappoint us, we feel defeated. This emotional attachment turns failure into suffering. Every skill you have ever learned came through repeated failure. You did not learn to walk without falling. You did not learn to speak without making mistakes. Yet as adults, we forget this natural process. We expect ourselves to succeed immediately, and when we don't, we question our ability instead of refining our effort. The irony is that failure never destroys confidence, interpretation does. When failure is seen as feedback, confidence grows because learning continues. Failure also reveals areas that success hides. Success often masks weaknesses. When things go well, we don't reflect deeply. We move on quickly. Failure, however, forces introspection. It slows you down and asks you to look honestly at your preparation, your mindset, and your decisions. It shows you gaps that need attention. This is why people who fail and reflect often grow faster than those who succeed without awareness. There is also a hidden gift in failure: humility. Failure reminds you that you are human. It softens arrogance and deepens empathy. People who have failed understand others better. They listen more, judge less, and lead with compassion. In contrast, those who have never failed often struggle to relate to pain. Failure, when handled correctly, builds emotional intelligence. Many people avoid failure by avoiding effort. They delay action, procrastinate, or settle for less than they want. This avoidance creates a different kind of failure: silent failure. The failure of not trying, not risking, not discovering what you are capable of. That kind of failure leaves behind regret, which is far heavier than disappointment. Temporary failure hurts, but long-term regret wounds the soul. Failure also tests your relationship with patience. Success rarely follows a straight line. There are detours, delays, and dead ends. Failure teaches you to persist without immediate reward. It strengthens resilience. Each time you fail and continue anyway, your capacity to endure grows. You realize that failure does not end you, it expands you. It is important to understand that failure becomes destructive only when it is ignored or misunderstood. If you repeat the same mistakes without reflection, failure turns into a pattern. But if you pause, analyze, and adjust, failure becomes progress. The question is not whether you failed, but whether you learned. Failure also teaches clarity. Sometimes failure is not about effort or ability. Sometimes it is about direction. You may fail because the path you chose does not align with your strengths or values. In that case, failure is not a sign to quit life, it is a sign to change course. It redirects you towards something more suitable. Many people discover their true calling only after failing at what they thought they wanted. Society often celebrates success stories without showing the failures behind them. This creates unrealistic expectations. You compare your behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel and feel inadequate. But behind every success is a series of failures that taught valuable lessons. The difference is not that successful people fail less, it is that they learned more. Failure also builds courage. Once you fail and survive, fear loses its grip. You realize that the worst did not destroy you. This realization is empowering. It frees you to take smarter risks, to speak up, to try again. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the understanding that failure is survivable. In the end, failure is a teacher, not an enemy. It arrives to correct, not to punish. It asks you to grow, not to give up. When you stop seeing failure as a reflection of your worth and start seeing it as feedback for your journey, everything changes. You stop being afraid of falling and start focusing on learning how to rise wiser, stronger, and more aware than before. Comparison is the fastest way to lose joy. It quietly steals happiness, confidence, and peace without making much noise. Most people don't even realize how deeply comparison affects their lives because it has become so normal. Social media, competition, and constant exposure to other people's achievements have made comparison feel unavoidable. But just because it is common does not mean it is harmless. Comparison slowly shifts your focus from your own journey to someone else's, and in doing so, it disconnects you from your own growth. The moment you compare, you stop being present. You stop appreciating where you are and what you have. Instead of measuring progress against your own past, you measure it against someone else's highlight. This creates dissatisfaction even when life is going well. You may be moving forward, improving, and growing, yet feel unhappy simply because someone else appears to be doing better. That unhappiness has nothing to do with your reality and everything to do with perception. Comparison is unfair by nature. You compare your full story, including struggles, doubts, and fears, with someone else's visible success. You don't see their sacrifices, failures, or insecurities. You see a moment, not a life, but the mind treats that moment as the whole truth. This distorted comparison leads to unnecessary self-criticism and pressure. There are two directions of comparison, and both are harmful. When you compare yourself to someone who seems ahead, you feel inferior. When you compare yourself to someone who seems behind, you feel superior. Neither leads to peace. Inferiority breeds insecurity, and superiority breeds arrogance. Both disconnect you from humility and gratitude. True confidence does not come from being better than others. It comes from being better than who you were yesterday. Comparison also ignores timing. Everyone operates on a different timeline. Some people bloom early, others bloom later. Some journeys are straight, others are winding. But comparison assumes that everyone should reach milestones at the same time. This assumption creates anxiety and self-doubt. You begin to feel late, even when you are right on time for your own life. Joy cannot survive in a mind that is constantly measuring. Gratitude and comparison cannot coexist. The moment you compare, you stop appreciating. You forget how far you've come because you are too focused on how far someone else is. This erodes contentment. Even achievements lose their sweetness because you immediately compare them with bigger achievements. Comparison also damages authenticity. When you constantly look at others, you begin to imitate instead of innovate. You chase what is popular instead of what is meaningful to you. Over time, you lose touch with your own voice. You begin living someone else's definition of success, and even if you achieve it, it feels empty because it was never truly yours. Another danger of comparison is that it turns life into a competition instead of a collaboration. You stop seeing people as companions on different paths and start seeing them as rivals. This mindset isolates you emotionally. It becomes harder to celebrate others' success because you view it as a reminder of your own perceived shortcomings. But success is not a limited resource. Someone else's growth does not reduce your potential. Comparison also drains energy. Mental energy that could be used for learning, creating, and improving is wasted on self-judgment and envy. This emotional exhaustion slows growth. Ironically, the more you compare, the further you fall behind, not because you lack ability, but because your focus is misplaced. Letting go of comparison does not mean losing ambition. It means redefining it. Healthy ambition is driven by purpose, not insecurity. It pushes you to grow without tearing you down. When ambition comes from comparison, it becomes toxic. You work harder, but with anxiety instead of joy. You chase success, but with fear instead of clarity. The moment you stop comparing, you reclaim your joy. You begin to notice your own progress. Small wins feel meaningful again. You start appreciating your strengths instead of obsessing over your weaknesses. Peace returns not because life becomes perfect, but because you stop fighting someone else's life mentally. Every person has a unique combination of talents, experiences, and lessons. No two journeys are meant to look the same. When you compare, you dishonor that uniqueness. You question your own design instead of trusting it. But life is not a copy-paste process. What works for someone else may not work for you, and that is okay. In the end, comparison is a habit, and like all habits, it can be unlearned. It begins with awareness. The moment you notice yourself comparing, gently shift focus back to yourself. Ask, am I growing? Not am I ahead? Joy returns when you measure life in meaning, not in rankings. When you walk your path fully, comparison loses its grip, and happiness feels natural again.